closely following a developing story that could ruin summer travel plans for thousands of Canadians. Air Canada says that it will start cancelling flights and issuing refunds ahead of a potential flight attendant strike. More than 10,000 workers could walk off the job early Saturday morning, Eastern Time. In response to the strike notice, Air Canada has issued a lockout notice. The airline says the first flights will be cancelled tomorrow, with more on Friday, ahead of a possible total grounding of the fleet. The company is seeking government-directed arbitration to resolve the situation. Important note here, Air Canada Express flights are not going to be affected. Now, CBC's Clara Pasica is at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. Clara, you are at ground zero here. Tell us about the breakdown in talks and what it could mean for all of those travelers, Air Canada customers.
Well, Sarah, certainly many people heading to the airport today to get on an Air Canada flight, entering with some apprehension. Many people going straight to the board, seeing if their flight is doing okay. We have had the chance to look at the board, and it is looking pretty usual. Most flights going ahead, many flights still on time. But of course, this is all because Air Canada's 10,000 workers, represented by the union CUPE, issued that strike notice a bit after midnight yesterday, followed by the airline issuing a notice of a lockout. Now, Air Canada and Air Canada Rouge flights are the flights that the airline has decided to begin suspending gradually over the next 72 hours. Air Canada Express not being affected by that. So far, people are sort of getting on flights now, but certainly lots of people have some questions. We have had the chance to speak with a representative from Air Canada about some of these contingency plans, given everything that's happening. Have a listen.
If we go into a disruption, we have agreements with more than 100 airlines to try to find seats to protect our customers. Now, we have to be conscious, of course, that at this time of the year, there are very little seats available. So for those for whom we won't be able to find seats, then we'll refund or give them the opportunity to travel later.
Of course, not everyone has the option to travel later, depending on what they have going on in their life and why they might be traveling. We do know that some of the biggest sticking points in this negotiation have been pay, and that flight attendants are doing work before and after a flight that they're not necessarily being compensated for. So those are some of the issues going on behind the scenes in this labor situation here.
Claire, I'm trying to imagine if you are a traveler on Air Canada right now, you're going up, you're just starting out on your trip and you're looking to see if your flight's going, and it is, and you're getting on board that flight and heading off somewhere. It's a bit of a leap of faith, I think, that they're taking, knowing that there's possible cancellations that could be imminent here. What are you hearing from passengers?
Well, I mean, speaking of faith, like, we're hearing people praying that all will work out. We're hearing some that are saying, oh, you know, it's par for the course. Some people have a more flexible situation, but people are going to weddings, people are going to funerals, different things like that, hoping that other members of their family make it there and back where they're heading to or where they're heading home from. But why don't you have a listen to some of what I'm hearing?
I'm going to the funeral is on Friday. So that's why I'm leaving today, and make sure that I leave today and not later, so that I would be able to get out.
So we're planning on going to Halifax, and we just got here and learned about this very last minute. So because of that, we're not sure if we're going to go or not.
I believe anywhere from like 1 to a week it could happen, as long as the cancellation's being, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, we also have some family flying in from where we're flying, like from Newfoundland, so they're a little worried they're not going to be able to make it back.
So certainly uncertainty about what these passengers are going to face, what they should do, but also uncertainty about exactly what's going to happen with this strike. But for now, we have an impasse. We have these gradual cancellation of flights expected over the coming days, and we will be following along to see what happens and if a strike or lockout goes ahead early Saturday morning.
CBC's Clara Pasica at Toronto Pearson International Airport. Thank you. We begin with news that could throw a wrench in the summer travel plans for many Canadians. Air Canada says it will start suspending flights from tomorrow after the union representing more than 10,000 flight attendants issued a strike notice. Its members could walk off the job as early as 12:58 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. In response, the country's biggest airline has issued a lockout notice, both sides blaming the impasse at the bargaining table on a dispute over wages.
The reason we went down this road and the reason we are here is to get a tentative agreement at the table to bring forward for our members.
At this time of the year, there are very little seats available. So for those for whom we won't be able to find seats, then we'll refund or give them the opportunity to travel later.
CBC senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong is following these developments, and he joins us live from Vancouver. Peter, what would a strike or lockout mean for the Canadian travel industry?
Look, it could be devastating for the industry, for the entire economy, frankly. And it's important to highlight, though, where we're at in the process, right? You say things like the strike notice has been issued and lockout notice has been issued, and people rightly start to freak out. It's important to remember they still have all day today, all day Thursday, all day Friday to try to reach a deal and offset this. And part of the reason that the stakes are so high is because if they go off this cliff and if they can't reach a deal and they actually get into a point where they're canceling or blocking flights, that would be devastating for the airline industry. Remember when the Air Canada pilots went on strike? Was that just last year? The estimate on that was that it was costing the economy something like $100 million a day. The total cost, I think, was $1.4 billion. But then the trickle-on effect of that is enormous. You think about, we're trying to grow the Canadian economy in spite of the threat of tariffs and trade war from the South. If you can't have people flying, it's really hard to be making those business deals, to be moving those tourists, to be getting across the country and growing the economy. The small businesses across the country that are so dependent on travel and tourism and business travel as well, not to mention the chaos this will cause for every other airline and every other way of getting around this country. The stakes are enormously high. They picked this time, this busy travel time in the summer for a reason, because the stakes are high, and it gives both sides a little bit more leverage as they try to get the most out of the deal that they can for their side. But as I say, I think it's really important to just remember this is part of a negotiation. The threat of a strike and the strike notice, these are all part of that. And you have to think and you have to hope that these two sides will still find a way to come to an agreement before they actually bring the whole house toppling down.
Yeah, well, to your point about the effect on the economy, we're already hearing from some business leaders. They are calling for government intervention before this goes any further. What can you tell us about that?
So, usually, Sarah, and you know this, that usually to get, a back to work legislation or even to force both sides into binding arbitration, you need legislation. You need the House to be sitting. You need to recall everybody and go through it that way. There is a mechanism that Air Canada has asked the government to use that would allow them to force both sides into binding arbitration without using that legislation. So it'll be interesting to see how the government, how the union, how, sort of civil society reacts to that, because that would be a change in the process. But yeah, we're hearing from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Dan Kelly, who you know well from the CFIB, said Canada can't afford any more economic uncertainty. The federal government needs to be prepared to intervene immediately, given the threat of an Air Canada flight attendant strike, the impact on small businesses, tourism, and our growing need for greater interprovincial and international trade connections would be massive. And I think that comes back to the point I was making about why the stakes are so high, right? We are trying as best we can to grow the economy in spite of the trade war and the tariffs and all of the uncertainty that they bring. Piling this kind of uncertainty and the chaos that would come with an actual strike or a lockout would be enormous and would be massively consequential for the Canadian economy as well, which is why I think, there is still hope that these two sides can reach a deal. And there's certainly an awful lot of pressure on both the union and the airline to get back to the table and really get back to negotiating.
Peter, off the top, I think I slipped and said that you were in Vancouver. Of course, you're based in Toronto. Appreciate your time and that analysis for us. That's CBC senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong in Toronto. you.